Hello. Got my coffee. All right, I think we're ready. So let's talk about Endwar. So first and foremost, everything I'm talking about are things that are my opinion. They may be biased, but I'm trying to come off as unbiased as possible. This is going to be the most honest I can be about my experience going to Endwar and the traveling and everything in between. So to start out, I left on Wednesday. I left out of my local airport and got to my layover in Charlotte, which was like a 2.5-hour layover, which ended up turning into an extra 2 hours. I was supposed to get into Rochester at 8 p.m., ended up getting there at 10 p.m., and was supposed to meet up with some friends because the boarding, the hotel situation I was going to be at with my other group of friends, we weren't going to book until the next day. So I needed to find a place to stay that Wednesday night. And luckily, of course, I was able to stay at Drax's Airbnb and sleep on Flying Chicken's couch in his room. So it was an interesting place. It had a bathroom with a sink in the corner. And so the mirrors were also 2 panes in the corner. So you couldn't actually see your face, and got to hear some late night recordings going on that night as well. But otherwise, it was perfectly fine for me not having to sleep on the floor somewhere or in the airport at Rochester. Slept on Flying Chicken's just too small couch in his room in the Airbnb. Got to hear some alley cats fighting at 2 a.m. I mean, what kind of experience could you, it's the best type of experience. Joking aside, it was fine. I was able to stay there overnight and then get ready to see Qualifier 4 on Thursday of the Film Pro Tour. So I woke up a little bit later than the rest of the group because they had to get there at 6:30 to set up barriers for the qualifier. So on Thursday, I got to the qualifier around 10:30, maybe 11-ish. And by that time, my hotel room of the 3 people driving up, whereas I flew, they drove up overnight on Wednesday and were already at the venue for the qualifier by the time I got there. I just kind of walked in, got to see some people who I hadn't met before in person that I knew online, some of the people I do the Dart Jam podcast with, like Nathani and Boomstick Mods, who had their own teams that competed. So getting to see them compete was cool. Getting to see some of the other teams compete was cool. I'll throw in some clips just so you can kind of get an idea of what I saw, and I'll make a decent edit if I can out of it.
Shit, Eli, look at the cover again. Got him. Good job. Come on, Singapore with the camera. Come on, Singapore. Singapore. Come on, Ziggy.
So they went slow.
They use this freeze.
I don't know what he was doing there anymore.
On before. Watch us come back.
I don't think.
He's out.
3 rounds of 1v1.
You didn't want to say it. He's like, it's
That's what I heard him say, but.
Oh!
But anyway, it was just kind of a good warm-up for leading up to some of the events that I was going to participate in directly, like the VIP event that was going to happen that night. So obviously some of the people who competed and won at this event, like Nebula, who won second place, and then Flower City Fallout, that won first place, would then be with us for the VIP event. That was for all of the qualifying teams to participate in that night. That was run by Dart Zone themselves. They kind of rented out and reserved a restaurant of sorts in the Rochester area, but it was kind of like, it wasn't a Dave & Buster's. It was kind of, it had like a bowling alley, it had like ping pong tables, it had arcade machines, it had cornhole boards outside, fire pits, you know, but it was also a restaurant that had like bars and everything too. So it was kind of like an adult, like arcade, I guess. So they rented out the entire back half of the venue, which was really awesome, and gave us a really, really awesome experience there. Had food available for us, had non-alcoholic drinks available for us. You know, I did some bowling while I was there, which was fun.
I'm recording you now, so you better do something good.
Got to see some of the friends I have from my qualifying team, combo number 5. So got to bowl with them. Got to see the Mark 1.2 and the 2.1 in person for the first time there. That was the first time they kind of unveiled those blasters, because those were going to be the blasters we were going to compete with in someday. So seeing them, they had a firing range outside too. But mostly we were just kind of hanging out. Like, I was just enjoying my time there. I got a beer, so I got to, you know, just kind of, I was relaxing, had a very casual night, got to see some of the Dart Zone representatives who I had met at Qualifier 1 in Florida. So got to meet back up with them and hang out, got to meet up with some of the people I hadn't seen earlier that day that were at the venue. So we just had a good time with it, and I think that was from like 7 to 10 or so. And we left pretty much when the festivities ended and headed back to our hotel, because, you know, on Friday was going to be a pretty big day for me and the rest of the people in my hotel room. So Friday we got up not too early, but I was pretty much the only person that had to be at FilmCom when it started, because I had my own booth. Got there just before 10. I think doors opening was at 10, and I set up my booth, which was the Submarina Fabrications Etsy store and everything that I kind of run my product through, which was a pretty easy setup for me because I just probably didn't have as much things as other people did. My booth was right next to Blaster Barn, which is run by Flying Chicken, again, a good friend of mine, so I was in good company in my little corner. I had my my Aeon Pro pump kit. I had a full 3D printed pump kit available there, which I haven't sold in a really long time if you kept up with my store and me personally. 2 hardware kits, so you could get the files and make them, and then I've been working on a 1-to-1 replica of the crossbow that you can 3D print and you know, put homemade internals in, but it wasn't ready at the time, but at least I could scale it down, and I made, you know, little 1/4 size keychains that I sold there. So I had 20 of these available, and I sold one of the hardware kits, I sold one of the full kits, and I sold a lot of keychains. So that definitely helped my expenditures of this trip. So one of the major reasons why a lot of us were there is because Dart Zone was doing their own photo op for the Film Pro Tour final attendees, competitors, what have you. So myself being a competitor, to the people in my hotel room, Carius and MasterChef, and then Flying Chicken, again, next to me in his own booth. And then our other 3 members who showed up a little bit later but showed up on time were Nick, and Genesis. So we had, our whole team was made up, and we got to the area we needed to be, which was near Dart Zone's booth in the venue. And we got our jerseys for the first time, which we hadn't, you know, of course hadn't seen yet. So we got our Dart Zone Pro Tournament jerseys, had our names and numbers on the back, so it was really cool to kind of see these for the first time. And we did our photo op. We did some individual photos, some group photos, group videos, and then we did some individual videos, which we kind of asked if we could do, and they were, the marketing team at Dart Zone was totally cool with us doing some different images and videos. So it was a blast. We had a good time, and I think we made it better for them. So outside of that, I just kind of talked to people who were seeing things in my booth, maybe people who hadn't heard of me for the first time, or people who had only heard of me through the internet or what have you. So that was really cool to have those interactions available. And then I walked around and tried to see as much as I could as well. Some big booths that I remember, obviously I can't remember everyone's booths, but I went and personally saw everyone's booths that I could who were there. But like Al the Geek had like a really big booth near the front with like all of his kind of cosplay stuff with like armor with spikes on it and his kind of wasteland looking blasters and paint schemes and everything. Decepticreepers Customs was near the door and they had a crossbow that I was like really interested in buying, but they had this leather backpack that was had like patches all over it, but it was a backpack that had a wooden frame and you could load magazines into the top and they kind of gravity fed into the bottom, so you could reach out the bottom and pull out these 18 mags. And I'll have a video of that. But that, I think, it was something they were going to use for Endwar. I just saw some like really cool loadouts. Got to see Papatachi there, who's kind of an old school guy, and he had some of his old school NIC blasters available, who I've known for years. I think he actually bought my AM Pro pump kit, so that was it was kind of a cool interaction there. Of course, I saw the Dart Zone booth, got to see the Tomcat for the first time, which I was like really, really anticipating before that event, and it functioned really well. I was really interested in that. And of course, GameFace had a really awesome booth. I was kind of really impressed with the Tryon, and their whole presence there was really professional and well done. Of course, I saw plenty of people who I've known on the internet who I've now met face-to-face, like Roboman. I bought some stuff from my Lynx kit there, and I'll go on forever if I continue this, but you know, it was a really good time, you know, buying things, selling things, having those interactions with not just like enthusiasts in the hobby, but mostly makers and hobbyists, people that kind of think the same way about things you do and talk shop, whereas, you know, you can do that in a space where it's beneficial to that versus doing that in between rounds at a war or while you're getting shot at. It was good to have the time to have that opportunity available to you. And of course, I can't forget the Detroit Dart Talk guys, who was kind of our in-joke rivals for our Dart Jam podcast. So we did like a photo op with them where we were like kind of competing with them. They were great guys. I think it was Eric who let me borrow his screwdriver because I was going to do Endwar as a moderator. Ended up not needing to be a moderator for Endwar, so I needed to make a kit very quickly, and I didn't bring anything extra because I flew. So I needed to take my Aeon Pro and take the spring out and replace it with a lighter spring, and I didn't have a screwdriver. So I went around in the venue for a couple of people, ended up finding the Detroit Dart Talk guys had a screwdriver I could borrow, and like I went in the back of their booth and sat on the floor and opened this thing up and put a new spring in here, got it ready by the chronograph, like by the very, very end of the day, got it qualified for Endwar with the zip tie and everything, and I was good to go. So shout out to them because they saved my day. Consensus of that event, I mean, like it was great. Like there's nothing I could really say that was bad. It was a long day though, obviously, because it was from like 10 a.m. to 2:30, I think. But it was a worthwhile day, and you know, like it went by really quick. But I also felt very tired, if that makes any sense. Especially knowing that Endwar was going to be something I was actually going to compete in at 6 o'clock that night. So we really needed to kind of like prepare pretty hard for, you know, what was going to happen in the next 4 hours or so. For sure, out of all the events, if that's something I can easily get to, and like I have to go to one event, it's going to be FoamCon. It was, at least for me, for someone who is kind of an adult in this space and kind of do this type of work professionally, it meant a lot more to me than some of the other events would have.
Driver.
We ended up just kind of rolling up pretty casually to back to RIT's campus because we were there earlier that day, showed up again later for Mission 1 of Endwar, which was kind of held in a different spot than we were initially kind of told to in some of the initial planning documents. It was in like an open field pretty close to one of the parking lots in like this big quad where Drac was on a megaphone kind of in a stairwell and kind of had a megaphone to give out instructions and everything. We signed our waiver forms there and got everything we needed to go. The introduction to Endwar was pretty fast. To be honest, it went by pretty quick. It was more of just like, glad we're back, glad we're doing this. Here's some like quick instructions. Watch the video on Facebook that's going to explain how to do Mission 1, and you're off. which was fine for us because we had a pretty solid group with us. We had the SC&C kind of group, which was basically my hotel of myself and my 3 other people, Carius, Master Chef, and Robert, and which, you know, they're mainly playing the SC&C, some of our arena leagues in the Atlanta area, and some other kind of local adjacent groups. The combo number 5 team, so basically everyone who I mentioned prior, except Flying Chicken, who was taking photos for the event. We met up with Naptown Nerf, which was pretty much the 2 of them, and Daniel, who has played in our area a couple years prior, but also does a lot of HVZ events. The Boiler League of Tag, or the BLT, was also with them. I think they're a Purdue University-based HVZ group, so we were all kind of a large group. And then we were also with the Goosebusters, which is like the RIT kids. So they were the local crowd. And I'm not sure if we joined them at the events, like we met up with them right then and there and joined them, or if that was pre-planned beforehand. But I would say we had a pretty sizable group of around 20 to 30, maybe even 40 people at some times in this group. And a lot of people were either veterans of HVZ or veterans at the specific university. So me having just an Aeon Pro with 2 mags on my body and 2 mags in my backpack, I ended up being okay because I had a lot of people with more firepower or higher rate of fire that could help us out, and especially give us instructions that we necessarily didn't get, because the instructions were kind of slim on the front end for the event. You kind of had to know a lot of stuff prior. There wasn't a lot of instructions on like the special zombies or anything, so you kind of just had to go. Before I get into the Endwar stuff, quick shout out to a few people who helped me just get some extra video footage that I didn't have from the event while I was playing, but really helped me build my story of the event in its proper sense. So Boomstick Mods, he had some clips here and there that I grabbed. The Boiler League of Tag, or the BLT, you can find them on YouTube and Facebook. They were in our group that we played with, so they had a lot of footage of our group in a sense. And then Dart Sweep had a pretty extensive video on Endwar itself. And then there were some moments I was in there that I was able to grab. So if you want to watch out their videos and check them out, I'll link them in the description, because they obviously have a lot more of an in-depth experience of Endwar than I probably do in video format. So to start mission 1 was kind of I don't know what to call the mission necessarily, but we had 5 different locations across campus with 5 different moderators, and we had these little business cards, which were our like intergalactic pass, because everything was science fiction themed for this event. And that pass had 5 squares on it with different kind of like runes or glyphs from, I assume, Star Wars. And we had to go to those 5 moderators in those 5 locations, and they would have a hole punch and punch out a specific square on that, based on their designation. And then we had to go through all 5 locations, hole punch all 5 squares, and then go to Zone 6 once we got all those 5 punches. And Zone 6 was going to be where we would meet our last moderator, and they were going to take our card and we were going to get off planet, right? The issue for me came right at the beginning of this mission. And well, to explain that, we had to roll back to FoamCon. So these cards were actually given to us at FoamCon. So registration for Endwar was done there. It wasn't done at Endwar proper. So if you wanted to do Endwar, you had to go to FoamCon, which is a great way to kind of incorporate the 2 activities and get people who just want to do Endwar just in the building, and maybe they'll buy something or see something they didn't think they were going to buy. So that makes sense. As I said, I was going to moderate, ended up not moderating, ended up playing in Endwar itself. I entered Endwar pretty late and did my chronograph pretty late. And so I got a lot of information given to me very quickly. I got a lot of people who were kind of angry that I did it last minute. So I don't know if it was a combination of me just not hearing that I needed to bring that card to Endwar, or it just wasn't told to me because people were too busy yelling at me for whatever, that I just didn't bring it. So I was like, well, shoot, I need this card to finish the game, and I don't even have, it's at our hotel that's like 10 minutes away. I don't have a car. Like, I guess I'm going to turn into a zombie like right as I start this game, right? Luckily, by the time we got to Zone 1, there was a moderator who I'm friends with who was just kind of standing around. I asked them if they had an extra card. They had like 500 of them. I was able to get one, and I was able to just get right on with my team and go. Now, there was like about, I want to say there's probably 500, if not close to 600 people starting Endwar. So when I showed up, it was like the scale of the event was very noticeable, for sure. It's around after we did Zone 1 that Nick pretty much said that we were going to be a strike team for Endwar.
No, we're a strike team. We're basically...
Which I don't know if that necessarily happened, but it was good motivation for us for sure. So my strategy in moving around Endwar, especially in the first mission, was that I kind of lagged back a little bit and let the group kind of move forward, and then I would jog back, catch back up, and then when I caught back up, they would continue, I would lag back, and then I would catch back up. That ended up being kind of my downfall in Mission 1, and I'll get into that in a second. We really didn't see any zombies at all in Mission 1. We maybe saw like 3 of them going through those 5 zones, and they were taken out very quickly, right? It's also the beginning of Endwar, so I didn't really expect anything much. But I shot maybe 3 darts before I got to Zone 6. Zone 6 was going to be an area where the moderators would pick up our cards, like I said, and we would finish the mission. I was lagging back when my group got to Zone 6, and by the time they got to Zone 6, the moderator there picked up all their cards, said, "You're good to go. You can take off your headbands, become a zombie temporarily to finish out the mission, or you can just take a break for the next 2 hours, because you have a 2-hour break between each mission." So by the time I got there, the rules had kind of changed, so instead of just picking up people's cards and taking a certain amount of people by the end of the mission, it turned into we're only taking 6 people at a time, and when we take 6 cards, the moderators would kind of meander around that quad and kind of do something for 30 seconds to a minute or whatever, and then stop again, pick up 6 more cards, and continue to do this until the zombies kind of became too much for the humans to stop. So by the time I got there, that changed, and I was kind of screwed. It was something that I didn't necessarily like understand when I first got there, so like they probably accepted some people's cards while I was standing around like, what am I doing here? And then I noticed that you were supposed to basically crowd around the moderator and try to give them your card in front of all these other people and hope they take yours and not the person next to you. I mean, to me, it was kind of it wasn't an experience I necessarily liked just from the interaction you had to have. I'm 26, so to people older than me, I'm not old, but I'm not a child, I'm not a teenager, I'm very much an adult. And the idea that I had to kind of force my way into someone's way and try to hand someone my card like I'm at like a Black Friday sale, or I'm, you know, or do this and try to beat out like an 18-year-old or someone even younger than that and try to get my card taken more than theirs. It's kind of a humiliating and morally degrading experience. So I would hope that they don't do that again, because it just, I saw plenty of people older than me who were like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to like try to have someone who's like, I saw like someone probably in their 30s or 40s, you know, they're going to have to give their card to someone who's around my age and try to like have them take their card. It didn't feel good. And a lot of people had issues with the agency there. So like the decision making out of your control, because you got to Zone 6, you had your card punched, but you had to wait for a moderator to pick yours specifically. And I think a lot of people kind of got rubbed the wrong way with that. I'll get more into my opinions of the overall event later, but the consensus was that's kind of how I felt too there. Luckily, after like 3 or 4 times trying to get my card taken, my card was taken. I was able to take my headband off, head back with some of my friends to the new kind of staging area, because there wasn't a staging area before, which a lot of people had issues with, but there was a staging area now in one of the buildings. So we kind of hung out there for 20 minutes. We decided, all right, we're going to be zombies for a little bit and help them out. So we came back, we're zombies, to that quad, to some sand person noises.
I just got tagged out here, like, whatever. Someone just
Chill here.
Nick, this actually good. We're in distraction. It's on 5s, right?
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
So obviously we were not taking it too seriously, and we didn't need to, because there was already a ton of zombies there, because again, everyone who got out could come back in. At one point Nick fell, which we were very worried about, because again, that was an alternate for Foam Pro Tour final team, and also just for his safety, I was like, oh man, like, but that wasn't, he ended up being okay compared to some of the other interactions people had with safety later on in some of the missions, but yeah, we kind of just hung out, waited for that mission to end, and then just chilled out in the staging area and for the next 2 hours. So mission ended at around 8, waited for 2 hours, and then mission 2 was going to start at 10 p.m. and go to midnight that night. So for mission 2, me and the kind of combo number 5 group stayed, of course, on campus, and then when mission started around 10 p.m., we met up with the rest of our team outside of the staging area in that kind of central quad that everyone grouped into at the beginning and end of every mission. The mission itself had 4 major zones. You had a zone with a moderator in each location, and that moderator had these 2 kind of wooden runes or glyphs on the ground with a symbol on each. Some were lit up blue, some were lit up red, some of the moderators were lit up blue or red or switched while you were there. And you had to kind of take a picture or remember what that glyph was and then compile all of them together, figure out which glyphs you needed to use, which you didn't need to use, and formulate a word. And then that word was going to be your kind of ticket out, because there was a 5th location way off on the kind of eastern part of campus, or I guess to the map I have here, it's the eastern part of campus, and that was going to be where you would go to a portal with 2 moderators there. You would have around 10 people or so go into that portal with you. You would say that kind of magic word you translated, and then once you told them that word, you could go through the portal and leave the zone and complete the mission. That was a pretty straightforward mission for us. We didn't really run into much issue, again, because we had some of those RIT kids leading us around and figuring everything out we needed to. We got through 3 zones, 3 little areas on campus, and then we found actually the 4th area, which was the portal area. So we actually found that before we found the 4th area for the glyphs. But at that point, we weren't going to leave that area because their teams had already started to kind of group up there, and they already found some of the glyphs they needed. We didn't ask them and they didn't tell us. We kind of brute forced it ourselves, so that was at least nice that we didn't have to cheat to kind of get out. We figured out the glyphs were some Star Wars kind of glyphs they use in lore, and we found out the word was safe. And so we would say that word to the moderator. Once we were in the kind of circular portal area, we could then leave the area, and then we could come back as zombies just like what we did in mission 1 and kind of help thin the herd. I think we saw less zombies there up until the end than we did in mission 1. And I fired maybe 2 darts that entire time. I don't think I shot an entire mag off the whole first day. But we also, we had a good team, so I wouldn't really need to anyway. Regardless, we got to that final area and we were maybe the 3rd or 4th team to get into the portal and leave. So we got through there without any hassle. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for a lot of people. This is where, if mission 1 wasn't the thing you hated, mission 2 is going to be bad for you. Because the portal was in a really bad location, surrounded around by buildings, and the moderators didn't want you near the portal because if you didn't know what the word was prior, they didn't want people to overhear people going into the portal saying the word safe and say, oh, that's the word, okay, we can just go through now. So they had everyone stand as far away as they kind of physically could, which was just at the barrier of some of the kind of entryways to that quad, and you had to wait your turn. And then once a team left the portal area, you could come in and try your hand at saying the word and leave. So of course you couldn't go into the portal area. And then once zombies started to slowly grow in numbers, they were coming at you this way. This is you here, and there's 2 buildings on either side of you. So there was this really bad choke point for a lot of people. And again, once we left at like around 11ish. So we got done with the mission almost at an hour. But apparently, like, once 5 or 6 teams went in, some of those people who had finished turned into zombies, and it became really bad. 1, because it was dark out, so it was really hard to see some people. 2, you had this choke point, so you couldn't go forward, you couldn't go back. So it caused a lot of issues there in terms of safety, I think. And then you're playing on cement, you're playing on concrete because it's not on grass. And if you trip in the dark and you land on concrete, it's gonna be a bad time. I think a lot of people had issues with this very reasonably. I understand people's concerns there. I just think that this final area. You can see on the map it's so much farther away from all the other locations, I think because they wanted to keep it a secret, which is fine. I understand the idea that you don't want people to just go to the final portal, say, oh, the word's safe, and just finish the mission. But it was in a really dangerous spot. I think it probably should have been held on a grass field of some sort in a much more open area than kind of in a close cornered, very tight CQB kind of location. A lot of tempers flared there. It became a lot of issues there. People kind of, I wouldn't say got physical, but some people's blasters broke, some people got injured. So a lot of people left that mission pretty unsatisfied, which is reasonable. I think I've heard that it was supposed to be held in a different location, but that didn't end up working out. So, you know, that's a little bit unfortunate, but what happened happened. I just think it was too far away from other things going on campus. Again, we had the opportunity to go back and become a zombie and help thin the herd, but like for us, it was half a mile away from the staging area. So we would then have to go back to the staging area at 11 o'clock after we've had a full day of activity, put our stuff down, then walk the half mile back to the portal area, help the zombies there thin the herd, and then go back to the staging area again, get our blasters, and then go out to the parking lot so we could leave. And we were just like, no, we're going to go home. Which ended up being okay because there's already too many zombies and issues going on there. But yeah, generally, like if there was a real medical emergency there that happened, like someone broke a leg or something, or something really bad, I mean, you're too far away from the staging area where most of the moderators were to do anything. In fact, because that portal became such a contentious point and there were some physical altercations or some tempers being flared, you had maybe 2 or 3 moderators in the location. Maybe more came later. Obviously, I wasn't there, but when I was there, there was only 2 moderators kind of running that location. You needed some extra moderators to kind of help that out and make sure that things went smoothly. And I think they probably got a little overrun by the things happening on the field at the time. But otherwise, it was perfectly fine. It was fun. It was a good atmosphere. But you know, safety is more important than gameplay for me. So we started our Saturday by going to a diner pretty early, and then we got to RIT at start time for Mission 3. Mission 3 was kind of an open world mission. We got there, of course, we saw the video that got released at 10 a.m. This is a 10 a.m. to noon mission, and we had to go around campus, find moderators at different zones across campus, and do certain mini games with those moderators. And those could have been a variety of different things. There was a moderator that had a maze that you had to go through the maze and get out. There was a moderator that had trash around their quad. You had to give the trash to them. There was a moderator that had PVC pipes that you had to build a tower out of at a certain height. There was a moderator that had balloons, and you had to carry a single balloon in some PVC pipes, and you had to walk around with them and follow a path. A moderator had Simon Says. Another moderator had a kiddie pool with water in it that you had to take water buckets and transport that water into a basin of some sort. So I think there was overall 6 different locations doing that. And you got stamped. You got a stamp either on your hand or your arm or something for that. We didn't necessarily know how many stamps you needed. We didn't know what those stamps meant. We didn't know, there was rumors that the zombies were also doing a certain activity to get stamps. So we were thinking maybe there was like a tally at the end that was being done. We had no idea. But we started the mission and we got to our first moderator and we found out that the moderator wasn't ready because their supplies weren't ready yet. So the mission had already begun, ran into our first moderator, wasn't ready. So we continued to move, we found another moderator, they also weren't ready. So we were like, okay, we're past 10 a.m., no one's ready to start the mission except the people playing. We go back to that first moderator, they now have their supplies, but now someone's doing the mission with them and there's zombies all around them because it was very close to the staging area. So obviously we would have been sitting ducks if we waited. So we continued to move on to the third area, which was in the kind of soccer fields at the very corner of campus. And it was a pretty open field, so we kind of waited there with the moderators because they also didn't have their supplies needed. And at this point, it was around 10:40. So about 40 minutes into the mission, and not all of the zones were ready to have their supplies. And I think there was an issue with certain moderators being late to bring those props. for whatever reason, and that became an issue for the players because it was like, we want to play the game and no one's ready. But by the time we were there, we were waiting. Again, there's a big open field. It was easy for us to cover and make sure there wasn't any zombies around anyway. The balloons finally got there because that was the balloon area. I was one of the first people to do it. When I did the balloon thing, a single person at a time got their stamp. And we had about 40 people that day with us. So it would have taken all day to do it. They then quickly, after me, moved it to 2 people could do it, and both of you got stamped. 2 people holding 1 set of PVC pipes. And then I think later they just did like 5 people at a time. Like you just walk with them and escort them because it was like, there's no way, right? We then asked the moderator like what these stamps are for and what we're gonna be doing with them. And they either couldn't tell us or they honestly didn't know, which didn't feel good because it's like, we need to kind of know information about the game and we don't know what these stamps are for. You know, I'm just stamping my arm with these stamps. As you can see, I got my stamp done on that mission. We had no idea what we were supposed to do. And they kind of told us that, you know, you can just kind of do this mission and you don't have to get stamps if you don't want to. You can just survive for the 2 hours. So that's kind of what we ended up doing. I mean, obviously, if we found a location with a moderator that wasn't overrun by zombies, we would attempt it. But our goal was just to continue to move and avoid zombies whenever we could. So shortly after that, we found another moderator to the north of the map I have, and they had Simon Says, and that was pretty straightforward. And then we ran into some zombies around there, around the PVC area, which was kind of in that middle thoroughway. We attempted that. Couldn't do that before the zombies got there, and we just kind of ran around campus and got to like one of the major edges of campus and just camped there and held off as many zombies as we could and ended up kind of making it out okay.
Come on! Woo! There you are! Woo!
It wasn't until after we finished mission 3 that we found out one of the team members from our hotel, Carius, we lost him at some point. He was kind of lagging behind and got tagged, so he got out. After that, my legs were pretty tired, you know, from everything that we had done from the day prior to that day to all the traveling, and I knew that on Sunday we would have the Foam Pro Tour final. So I was like, should I skip mission 4 so that way I can feel better for Sunday? Because like, if my legs don't feel better tomorrow because they felt really bad, then it's gonna impact my gameplay. And we're playing for money. I would at least like to perform the best I could. Master Chef also agreed with me. And then we told our combo number 5 team and they also agreed. So we all skipped mission 4, which got some of the people from our team, like our major kind of caravan, pretty upset because they needed the help, but which caused a lot of them to get tagged in mission 4, but it is what it is. We ended up, you know, after noon, got some food, took a 2-hour break, and then took another 2-hour break because from 2 to 4 was mission 4 that we totally skipped. Robert from our hotel decided to volunteer to become a zombie because he was also tired, but he wanted to continue playing, but didn't want to lug around all his gear. So he joined the zombie team for mission 4 as well. Of course, I don't have any information about mission 4 because I wasn't there. I'm not going to talk about it, but a lot of people, some people were pretty angry about mission 4. Some people thought it was fine, but wasn't there to really give an opinion on it. So during mission 4, I took about a 2-hour nap, and by the time I woke up, I looked at some of the consensus online, some people who were playing Endwar, is that a lot of people got tagged, like I said. A lot of people. Like, there was a lot more zombies, I think, maybe in mission 4 than there were previously, or I don't know what happened, but I was hearing that there was, like, somewhere in the teens of humans left, like maybe 15 to 20. Which is kind of crazy because we had a decent amount of people through mission 3, so either maybe people just didn't do mission 4 or I don't know what. We ended up getting to the staging area, that kind of central quad location, and there seemed to be about 30 to 40 humans, so I'm not sure again if those people skipped out on mission 4 or if they missed some missions earlier in the day and decided to show up for mission 5, but regardless, the numbers are at least a little bit better. Unfortunately, it also seemed like a lot of people came back on the zombie end of things for mission 5, and there was probably around 300, maybe 200, 300 zombies just kind of standing there waiting for us. So that was like, honestly, it was kind of fun because it was like, all right, now the party started, because I hadn't really got to even fire my Anon Pro up until this point. This was the first mission where we had an actual moderator tell us the rules. Because I think they had changed the mission last minute, I think, due to the lack of human players. So they told us the mission directly, which was amazing because this is the first time we were actually able to like kind of ask questions, get information from the moderator that maybe a video wouldn't give us, or just have a minute to kind of wrap our heads around the mission instead of finding out what the mission was as the mission was starting and then having to make sure we don't get tagged while we're watching this video on Facebook. But before we started the mission, I see my friend Carius, and he's got a velvet blazer on, and he's got a full suit and tie in the summer. And I'm like, what are you wearing? He's like, oh, I'm the boss zombie. And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't realize there was gonna be like a boss zombie, and this was also something planned like weeks prior. So again, from the Atlanta area, a lot of the people running Endwar were from the Atlanta area that we play with regularly. They decided that Carius was gonna be the boss zombie, and he just like didn't tell us the whole time. And I remember like in his gear, he had this like tennis ball launcher, this like gigantic like spring-powered, torsion spring-powered blasting thing. And I was like, what are you gonna use this for? He was like, oh, blasting zombies. Turns out that was his weapon as the boss zombie, that he kind of held that from us. So that was kind of fun to see him do that randomly, which is also why he got tagged out in mission 3, because he knew he had to be the boss zombie. Again, my combo number 5 team was with me, plus like Master Chef, and we had Daniel was still there. The Goosebusters team wasn't there. They ended up actually separating from us when we started, and I'll get into that later. At least the remnants of that team, because a lot of them did get tagged in Mission 4 with Naptown Nerf and BLT. That was probably the most darts I shot by far. I shot definitely like 3 full mags, which I hadn't done in any mission prior. We kind of got moved up the main kind of throwaway from the staging area because our goal was we had these 4 moderators with the pool noodle swords and the Rubbermaid bin shields, and our job was to kind of escort them through campus, and they would kind of lead us along wherever we were supposed to go, because they had a set path to this field, which we found out when we got there, where the boss zombie was, with of course a whole horde of zombies. And their goal was to tag the boss zombie, eliminate him, and then when I guess he got eliminated, a signal went out to the final location to leave, which ended up being the soccer fields at the south part of campus. And so if you killed the boss zombie, you could then travel all the way across campus to that final location, and then once you kind of got through that location, you finished the mission and meant you won Endwar, basically. Which is weird because a lot of people don't expect to win Endwar. I kept calling it the final stand because that's what I heard it was. But there was a win condition for sure. We just didn't get there. So we get to the kind of a parking lot area, and we're surrounded by zombies from all corners. The humans make like a circle, and we're getting picked off pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if it was Genesis or someone else close to us decided that we were going to go behind some trash bins and go down like a hill where there was some like bushes and things, and head down that way versus this way where the zombies were. So we kind of scooted through there. I don't know what happened to one of our Nicks, but our other Nick got held up at the trash bins and didn't follow us. I don't know if he realized we were down there or not, and he got tagged. So I saw that on video later, but it ended up, you know, we got into this grass field, and we kept getting pushed further and further into this grass field from the zombies, and ended up finding our way onto the roadway, or at least the entrance to campus. And here we are on a street, and I'm like, this is not smart. We're literally on a street. We can't be doing this. As I'm looking at that, you know, I see some cars coming this way towards campus, and I'm like, they ended up going around the roundabout, not going on our road, maybe because they saw a whole bunch of random people on it or what. But I was like, hey, there's cars coming. This is not smart. And so then everyone started yelling car. Which paused the game. Some of the moderators got mad at us, and some of the humans kind of got mad at the moderators for yelling at us. It was kind of our fault because we we physically moved our body that way. It was the moderator's fault also for not telling us that we couldn't do that. And like, they should have just said, like, if you go to the road, you're eliminated. Like, you can't do that. So we moved it back onto the grass, started the mission again, and kind of just survived as long as we can. Apparently, at some point in there, Carius did get tagged. The boss zombie got tagged, and it meant that the final location had opened, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we didn't really realize that because we were surrounded around by zombies in all directions. One of the funniest things I saw during Endwar was one of the special zombies is called a spitter, and they have like a mini soccer ball, and their job is you can throw that soccer ball at a human, and if it touches them, they have to kneel until the human revives them, which means that a zombie can run up to them and they can't run away. I mean, you can still fire, I think, but like, it's pretty detrimental to your gameplay. There was maybe like 10, 15 humans left at this point. We're in the very back of this grass field. I look over to the right, and maybe 10, 15 feet away from me is a spitter getting ready to throw this soccer ball at my general direction. I'm not sure if they're aiming for me or not, but if they were, they would have hit me for sure. And I don't have time to react at all. But luckily, as they're throwing this, a zombie sprints past, not seeing them. I think they're going for a human further back. And as they throw the soccer ball, it hits them like right in the face. And like, they were both like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. And I'm chuckling. We all think it's a pretty funny thing that just happened. But for my own safety, I just plink both of them and continue to play, chuckling. So that was a pretty funny interaction I had for sure, even if I was kind of tertiary to it. And then I think at one point there was like just a small group of humans left. Dart Sweep, who got a lot of the footage from this event with his GoPro, got a lot of great footage. I think in his footage, he gets tagged, and right before he gets tagged, I think someone steps on him, or someone like steps on his foot or kind of hits him, which gets him tagged. And if you look at that footage, that's me right there. So I think I may have gotten him tagged out, and I'm truly sorry. That was not my intention, but yeah, I guess shit happens, right? But I got tagged out shortly after that, and was just like, cool, we're done, I guess. So then we had to go to the kind of final area, which was the zone to leave the soccer field. They wanted all the humans, all the zombies or whatever to go to that area, take the final photos or whatever have you, the final congratulations on playing Endwar. And then we would go back to the staging area to pick up your gear and stuff, and there you would also get your commemorative coin that you got for competing Endwar. So our team just kind of hung out in that area in the quad. We were too tired, and we were hanging out with some of the people we knew who were moderating at that point, and we helped hand out some of the coins. It was there that we found out that some of those RIT kids that we didn't even realize were playing, it was again like kind of the last remnants of that group. When we started the mission, they ran off in a completely different direction and just camped a location they thought was the area that the final zone would be, and just waited for it to open. So, I mean, they didn't really cheat, but they didn't play correctly. So it was kind of like it wasn't really like a moral victory. So my overall consensus for Endwar as an event, arguably, I think the moderators just didn't have enough people. I think they needed at least 10 to 15 more people to run that effectively, if not double. I think they had maybe 10 to 15 people as moderators. And I volunteered to moderate, but they kind of made it clear that they didn't think I was necessary. So I'm not sure if anything changed or what have you, but some elements felt very last minute as a result of that. Like Mission 3, where some of the props weren't even ready yet by start time. Videos with the instructions, they should have just been released at the end of each round. So Mission 1, when Mission 1 ended at 8, the next video should have come up around that point, so that way people had time to watch it, and then if they were off campus, they could have come back 30 minutes early, asked some moderators for guidance or any questions before the mission started at 10. But because they got released at 10, there was no time to ask moderators for anything. And then just having it on Facebook was hard for a lot of people. I mean, YouTube is a thing. It'd be much easier just to upload all of that early to YouTube and then release them public as the event went on, but such is life. I personally didn't feel like there was a solid introduction to Endwar. Again, I was someone who had never done Endwar before, and I didn't even see that much video on Endwar, so I had only done one HVZ event on my college campus, and it was completely different. we had a lot of people who were new on our team who luckily had a lot of veterans that helped us with instructions or guidance on certain things. But if you were completely new and weren't with a team, or your entire team was new, it was hard to know like how tanks worked, hard to know how spitters worked. Some of these special infected, it was hard to know how they were going to work in the gameplay. There wasn't a lot just kind of explained in general from that first video, that first introduction. I think there was a lot of assumptions that people knew what they were doing, and it obviously probably wasn't the case for a lot of people. I felt like there was a lot of authority being thrown around, but not a lot of leadership from the moderating team. A lot of people having a lot of sternness, maybe coming out pretty strict with certain players, or coming out pretty forceful with how they deliver information to certain players, that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily susceptible to. A lot of people don't like being talked down to, and I could see I would have felt like I was being talked down to, and you could tell that some of the players had started to lose respect for some of the moderation because of that, or started to get frustrated with the moderation because they felt like they were being belittled at times in their critiques or in their stoppages of play and educating the players. I think you need to have a much more personable approach with that type of thing, especially with all these people coming from all these backgrounds. And I felt like, you can have a megaphone and you can shout as much as you want and you can be as strict as you want, but it's hard to get people to listen when you do that. And you could see by the end, by Mission 5, when they had 2 separate stoppages of play and were yelling at people, some of the humans were yelling back, and it just didn't come off great. And that leadership, I think, also went down the levels for the moderation team. I mean, talking to certain moderators at at zone locations to do certain tasks, some of them didn't even know what they were doing, or didn't have the right instructions for us, or it didn't feel like a cohesive unit at times. It felt like just a bunch of people kind of doing things, but it didn't feel like this was a proper moderation team at times. And you could kind of see that certain moderators at the locations of games, they were getting overwhelmed, and they lost the attention of players, and lost that respect of players at times. And that definitely impacted some people's play. This is a kind of me personally thing, but I generally don't like when there's misleading or purposely altered instructions on games, where you're like, oh, it's a secret, like you'll find out, which sometimes some people like, and sometimes there's a necessary choice for that. But like with Mission 3, it was like, what do we need these stamps for? Apparently 4 stamps would finish the mission, but we didn't know that, and it was like, you should just tell us that. Like, there's no reason why that has to be a secret. And you have all these variables where you're first time on this campus. Maybe this is the first time you're playing Endwar, the first time you're playing with these people. All of these different variables that are totally new for you. I think sometimes it's important to have a variable that's very controlled, something that is going to work a certain way. So I think I missed having that kind of structure that would have probably helped me understand how these games worked a lot better as a new person, for sure. I personally think there's an outright lack of safety protocols in the entire Endwar. Again, with Mission 2, having that Mission 2 be put in an area that was really detrimental for a lot of players, and was really hard for moderation to control that environment, and was a really unsafe environment. Not a lot of great lighting, you're playing on concrete, there's a bad choke point there. That should have been really discussed a lot further. There was a safety protocol kind of video that was made and put on Facebook, but it wasn't discussed in person. I think you should double, triple up safety protocol information, because some people may have showed up later and didn't hear that. You always need to enforce safety protocols. That should be first and foremost, and I feel like gameplay was put before safety was in certain cases. Obviously, there's no paramedic on scene. A lot of locations were very, very far away from the staging area or just central campus, so if someone did have a medical emergency like passing out, heat stroke, broken limbs, how are you going to transport them in a location where an ambulance can get to them effectively? And I think that needed to be discussed pretty strictly. And I think it was very laissez-faire from my perspective on that. All that aside, though, I mean, just the thing that really struck me about Endwar that makes me really want to come back, especially bearing in mind all the critiques I have, is seeing all sorts of just factions present. I didn't expect to be part of multiple teams that they had strong feelings about who their team was, and they had patches that said that, or shirts that said what team they were on, or giving out things because of the team they were on. Just the types of blasters, the types of kits, how people had their loadouts. They were all very, had very strong feelings about how they wanted to play. The colors present of the type of personalities coming from all these different backgrounds, areas of the country, different, niche groups, different friend groups. seeing all those come into play and kind of join into this melting pot. These niche behaviors, these call outs, these call signs, these chants, these slogans for their teams. There was such a gravity to that for me that I've never been to an event this big. And I felt that. I was very starstruck by it. To see all of that work in real time, just seeing that all play out, it's hard not to be romantic about an event like this. And I can see why a lot of people hold Endwar in such a high regard for them personally. So it makes me want to do it again, even with all the things that went down. And that's what some of my friends who have done Endwar before, it's like, they've had worse experiences in other Endwars, but they still come back because they enjoy that experience so heavily. So if it's in a location that's easy for me to get to next year, I would love to be back. That left a really, especially as days progressed after Endwar, that left a really lasting impression for me. So we finished up that Saturday by going to a kind of nice Italian restaurant with my hotel of the four of us, and then we met up with the rest of the Combo Number 5 team that we were a part of for Endwar. That's kind of a celebration for everything we did, and also to kind of group up before Film Pro Tour Final on Sunday.
It's going to enable a lot more defensive play. Yeah, most definitely. This cover here is more traditions are like
So we got up Sunday, and Sunday is when the nervousness really started to hit. Like, as soon as I woke up, I was like, all right, today's the day. Like, I'm putting on this jersey to wear because I have to compete in it. Like, not just to wear it because it's fun and it looks cool. We got there pretty early. I think we were the earliest team there. I think we had to get there at like 10 or so, and then the live streams, I don't necessarily know some of the timetables of it, but we got there about an hour or so early. Because it was like an indoor soccer venue, kind of a recreational venue, so we met on the soccer field itself and got some of the procedurals from Drac and the Dart Zone team there. And we were told then to kind of find our own secluded spots. Our team of Combo Number 5, and then the 2 Rochester teams, which are, I think, kind of the same group, the Flower City Fallout that won in Qualifier 4, and Rochester Radioactive that won, I think, in Qualifier 2, if I'm not mistaken. We all 3 were kind of in this party room, which had some good AC because the main hall for the venue was pretty hot, and then the actual soccer field was like a greenhouse. I'm not sure if it was because of the plexiglass or polycarbonate or whatever it was on the sides, but like it was humid. So I felt bad for the refs that had to stay in there all day for sure. The vibe was it was a pretty like cautiously nervous vibe. So everyone was pretty quiet, kept to themselves, and was pretty anxious about the events that were going to go on. We were watching this live stream start, and they had a little TV set up for the people outside of the arena to watch, and it started to really hit in for a lot of people that like today's the day. The first match went off pretty like tough from our perspective because we were told that you couldn't give coaching from the sidelines. So then one of the teams started to coach. And then literally every team, it seemed like, was yelling at them to stop talking because some people competing weren't coaching, and everyone else around was like, we can't coach, like this isn't fair. And they just continued to coach and no, I'm going to do it, whatever. And just got louder and louder. And it was like, man, this is getting pretty tense. After that first match happened in that round, we asked the moderation team if we could coach. They said we could. Mistaken information on their part. So then everything kind of quelled after that, which also the vibe kind of got a little bit more casual as the rounds progressed. People were getting more into it. People were getting more competitive. The first rounds or so, like there was a little bit of emotion going on from people, especially the people who lost or whatever. But like it started to cool off, especially because like, a lot of people came here thinking it was going to be a 2-round elimination, and then we found out like the day of that it was a 1-round elimination, and it's like kind of sucks that you went all this way to like not have a chance to go through a loser's bracket like you did in every other qualifier. But I'll kind of get more into that with the consensus at the end. Our match was the 4th match in round 1, and we were playing against Flower City Fallout, which won Qualifier 4. Again, they play like twice a week. Home field crowd. I think they play in that venue a lot. So they definitely, we played pretty competitively, but we don't practice a ton. 3 of our teammates live in Maryland now, and I've only seen one of those guys one separate time outside of the first qualifier we did. And, you know, 2 of the other people I'd met for the first time at this event. So, like, we didn't really have much of a strategy because we don't play a lot with each other, except the few of us that have been playing for like 10 years or so, off and on through the years. You know, we just kind of were like, yeah, we're the average Joes of this tournament. And we were totally fine with that. We came to have fun.
Yeah, no, Chef, you're back here. You're floating between chicken back here and Genesis is going to be taking the snake and moving out. Or, worst case scenario, from these points, so they can triangulate, right?
All right, here we go. Everybody's taking
All
cover.
5 members of both teams made it into cover successfully. Halfway there with 90 seconds elapsed.
That was off to a quick start there. So
And we're taking a look at the Flower City Fallout guys here in cover, rocking the 1.2. And then we just jumped over to combo number 5, double stacked on this back piece of cover. Back cover is obviously really strong for guarding your gate. It's a
we gotta move, we gotta move, we gotta move.
3-on-3 move.
Number 9 there is down.
With 20
Caruso
seconds
on a
to
run
go.
there. Is he tagged? Is he tagged? Oh.
We ended up losing 2-0, but I did have a really nice reload at one point.
Calling out to each other.
Spadoni here with a very quick reload.
And Genesis had some really interesting back and forth strategy in the snake that they had. She like did some pretty cool action shots.
Combo number 5 is making a play up the snake. Still 2 players in the strong cover on the Flower City Fallout side. With over 90 seconds elapsed, though, it's time to start making plays.
And Flying Chicken does his Flying Chicken thing, which is dodging darts, which I'm impressed he tried to do it, which he actually didn't do too bad with it, but like...
A little dancing action by number 40.
I'm gonna say, number 40 is excellent at dodging.
Yes. Thinking he's Neo there, for sure.
you can't teach an old dog new tricks sometimes. But I could tell some of us were, you know, a little bit bummed out that our kind of journey had ended there and we lost. But, you know, it didn't take too long for everyone to pick their spirits back up and just kind of enjoy the atmosphere in the venue. It was a weight off my shoulders, at least, because I knew that I didn't have to worry about competing anymore. I could just kind of watch the action. And I did. I recorded a lot of it. Frumble's team, who I knew from Qualifier 4, they didn't qualify there, but they qualified in Qualifier 2, so hats off to them. They had a really interesting like strategy where they like the players actually moved in position. They apparently like practiced a ton in the off season, so you know, good on them. They ended up finishing 4th. Nebula got 3rd place, Flower City Fallout got second place, and Rochester Radioactive got first place. So the two Rochester teams played each other in the final. So it was like, some people thought that it was staged or Dart Zone was paying them, and I'm like, there was a lot of like weird stuff going on the internet that I tried not to pay attention to, because if you were at the venue, you had a certain opinion of things. If you weren't at the venue, you, I guess, saw things completely differently. But overall, like, a lot of people there who were competing, you know, had a good time. I'll get into some of the issues that people had, but like generally with the issues that were present on the day, we took it a very mature way and, you know, dealt with things accordingly, where, you know, sometimes things aren't fair, sometimes shit happens. It's the first time this tournament's being done. You just got to move on with life. This is not the end of the world for some people. So, you know, people acted maturely, and I'm glad that, you know, things didn't get out of hand, especially on like a live stream or something. My consensus was that, like, I'm not super critical or harsh on the event itself, because I understand the ins and outs of running something like this, and understand the kind of issues present were sometimes not the fault of the people running the event themselves. Because obviously there was the whole issue that, I'm sure if you're watching this video or know anything about the event, there was the whole Mark 1.2 blaster malfunctioning for a couple of different rounds, to the point where one was so locked up they had to replace it with a Mark 3, even though they had extra Mark 1.2s available. But so, I mean, that was kind of their fault. But generally, I mean, you're getting these blasters from overseas, bringing them in. I mean, obviously they probably could have had more research and development done to get these really, really solid for the event, but they could have been rushed out. We don't know that. We don't know the ins and outs of that. But the people there are a marketing team. They're not a part of the design team making these blasters. They're just here to get the content that they came here to get, right? And you can't really blame them for the issues of the blasters. That's not their responsibility. They work a totally different job at the company. So, you know, in terms of that, I didn't blame them for that, right? Because they're just people doing their job. And they're also, you know, social media representatives. They're marketing directors. They don't run sports events. This isn't ESPN. You know, this isn't like a paintball league or something. These are just people who do a normal job. So for them to get thrust into this position where it's like, okay, you do social media, but now you're reffing a game. It's kind of hard. And, you know, obviously Drax's team was intended to do a lot of that, but also Drax's team had done FoamCon and had done Qualifier 4 and had done Endwar. And so they were like dead exhausted. So, I mean, that had a factor to it as well. But like, I hold a lot of that with a grain of salt, because like, it is hard to run things. And I think when you're on the internet and you're seeing it on the internet or on a live stream, you just like don't factor that in. But seeing it in person, seeing the people trying their best to give a tournament to us, you know, I couldn't be happier with how the Dart Zone representatives treated us and acted towards us. They had a real professionalism to us, to the events. You know, the VIP event, the photo op, how they treated us. They talked to us all the time, not during events. Even after Foam Pro Tour final, they came up to us and just asked us how we felt, congratulated us, talked about certain moves we did. They didn't have to do that. This is just a job for them. They could have just gone home, but they, you know, wanted to interact with us in a really positive way. And so, you know, some of the guys that I've interacted with a couple of times that were at that venue, I mean, they were superstars. They were really, really great to us. And they also understood, like, during the event, after the live stream was over, they had already heard some of the criticisms and some of the negativity that had come out. And they were really, like, hoping to make that better for us in the future. We'll see if that happens, but, you know, they had a, you know, because I asked, I was like, to one of them, you know, are you just like, is there a weight lifted off your shoulders now that this is over? And they're like, yes, but like, we also felt like we could have done more. And I appreciated that honesty. When I played, we didn't have any malfunctions with our blaster. When we played Flower City Fallout, I didn't seem like there was any malfunctions with their blasters. They also won that. So, I mean, they did tag us out with those blasters. And there were other rounds where there was no malfunctions. I mean, I think there were 4 1.2s because there was 2 for each team available. And I think like maybe 1 or 2 of those was faulty. One I think was pretty faulty early on. But I think they had, you know, it's like, depending on the round, some of them worked fine and some rounds they didn't. So, but I don't think all of them were faulty. There was a kind of consensus that every single one of them didn't work, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think they're great blasters, but I think people are kind of being a little bit hyperbolic about the situation. And you know, it's like, I understand the critiques. I agree with a lot of those people. I just think we need to be reasonable with how we critique. I think a lot of the issue too was not having a separate stream going while there was disputes. Because obviously, if you're watching on the live stream, you saw a lot of commercials, which I agree there probably should have been less commercials. Obviously, this is a marketing opportunity for Dart Zone, but yeah, there's a lot of commercials going on. And there's a lot of disputes. So anytime you wanted to talk to a referee about something that happened on field, you had to dispute that claim, and they had to take down all of the live video feeds, all the live cameras going on, all of the drones, and analyze that footage and see if they could find that, oh, they did get tagged there, or oh, they didn't get tagged there. And the problem with that is, you know, if you're watching on a live stream, they can't use those cameras to record the live stream if they currently have them taken down so they can analyze the footage they just took. I hope that makes sense. Like, the dispute logo was done on the computer and was a layover that was put in. Of course, it wasn't live recorded. So if they had a separate set of cameras, maybe cameras that were recording some of the crowd interaction, or just, you know, had those go live when the other ones went off live, then they could have at least had some recordings going on while those disputes were happening. But I just think that maybe they weren't prepared for that. They weren't ready for that. And obviously, again, they're not a media company. They're a product company. So hopefully in the future they work through that and make that better. Obviously, you know, it was cool when we were playing to see the graphics. I saw them after the fact of the live stream, the kind of the videos of us kind of with our team and everything, all the stuff they took from the photo shoot in FoamCon, which looked really cool. I mean, some of that stuff is awesome. Some of that stuff's on the internet now, on their Instagram feed. So it's really cool that they use some of that for their Instagram, and then for the re-uploads of the tournament on their own YouTube channel. I think a lot of the camera footage, at least when I was watching while I was at the event, it seemed like a lot of the cameras were really close-up shots on players. They didn't use a lot of like wide shots, which when I was watching, I mean, I was at the venue and I was just watching the live stream, and I was like, I can't really tell what's going on because the camera shots were so close up to the players that you couldn't see where they were on the field, where they were shooting at, what the perspective of the other person shooting at them was, how many people were getting tagged out, how many people were left on the other team. And they would try to go in between footage as much as possible, but they didn't use a lot of wide angle shots as much as they should have. And you had these drone shots that I feel like weren't utilized as much as they could have. And you know, so I think they just needed practice maybe for that. You know, this is the first time that anything like this is being hosted by a legitimate company that isn't a media company or isn't like a dart league, you know, proper. So there will be hiccups, and you got to kind of understand that. And, you know, sometimes it's not great. Shit happens. I spent a lot of money to be here, as a lot of people did. But the thing is, I didn't feel like there was any cheating involved. Anyone who got tagged who didn't call their hits, I mean, they still got tagged out. So at least it wasn't like you won because you lied about getting tagged or didn't call your hit. So a lot of that kind of naturally got dealt with, which was good. But I generally felt like people played more fair. Maybe it's because it was a live stream and you were on camera. Like, people didn't get angry on field as much or anything. At least it didn't seem that way. So maybe the camera helped in that way. So again, I couldn't be happier with how Dart Zone, the representatives there, treated us. The experience was really great, you know, and also the teams were really great. I didn't have a lot of chance to really communicate with a lot of teams outside of some of the guys from Frumble. So I know Combo number 5, the Frumble team, and Beef Squad went to like an Irish pub after the fact. So like I got a Guinness to celebrate with some fish and chips. It was great. It was great to kind of hang out with them and shoot the shit outside of the event and not have to worry about that. I know some teams continued to play after, which is crazy because I was dead tired from everything we did. But you know, it was a fun kind of just like bonding experience really with a lot of these people, and to kind of, you know, these are a lot of people I've met over doing this. These qualifiers, met through Endwar and everything. So like, you know, meeting all these new people was so much fun for me personally. I know our team, I wish we did more of like a legitimate photo op after the fact. There's like one photo of us in the parking lot of this Irish pub, but like, you know, it was the last time I'm going to see a lot of those guys for a couple months maybe, if ever. So, you know, hard not to get a little sentimental about that. That Sunday night, I don't know, craziness of my hotel room. The 3 people I was in a hotel room with decided to drive back to Atlanta that night, like they did coming up to Rochester, which meant that I got a night of the hotel to myself for the first time since I was there. Which, if you know, for those, if anyone who was in the hotel with me is watching this, you know, I turned that AC way down. I was right by the AC and I was cold all those days. I woke up Monday morning. It was raining. It was like the first day we got some real rain. We got rain on Sunday as well, but it was an indoor venue. So like luckily the weather was great through the whole, all of the environments we were at, especially everything outside, great weather. But it rained Monday morning, got an Uber to the train station, took an Amtrak train from like 10 a.m. From Rochester to Albany, and then from Albany got a bus to Boston, and ended up in Boston around like 5:36 p.m. To see someone, and spent the rest of the couple of days in Boston, which was great to kind of recuperate and chill and hang out while I was still there, and then took a flight back to my hometown, which I missed one of my flights, and that was a whole ordeal, but I'm here today, and you know, couldn't be happier with the way the trip went regardless. You know, again, if these events are held in an area where I can easily get to them, if they're on the West Coast, probably not easy for me to get to them, but you know, if they're still on the East Coast or even as far as Texas, I mean, I might be able to go, because I heard the words California and I heard the words Texas being mentioned through this week that I was there. So I'm not sure if those are going to be future locations or not. Well, it's yet to be seen. But I would love to be back. I'd love to see some of the people I met and catch up with friends at an event like this, because it was just so awesome. But if this is the last one I have, if this is my last Endwar, if this is my last Foam Pro Tour final, you know, I'm glad I did the first one of these, and I'm glad I had the experience I had, because I mean, honestly, there's not much I would have changed, at least from my side of things. I got as much as I could out of the event and couldn't be happier with that. And I think my friends did as well. So with that, I mean, that's kind of it. So see you on the next one.